Hello everyone. In the first tutorial, we will go through basic questions related to probability. Okay, let's start with the first question. Suppose that after 10 years of service, 40% of computers have problems with the motherboards. So the probability of having this problem after 10 years is 40%. Instead of percentage, I can show it like relative frequency, like 40 over 100 of cases. Okay, and what about having problem with hard drives? 30% of problems with hard drives. So for hard drives, let's denote it by HD, 30% of cases. Okay, and 50% have problems with both motherboard and hard drive. So both of them, I should use intersection for that. You remember? So MB intersection HD. So this is 15%. Okay, so what's the question? What's the probability that a 10-year-old computer still have fully functioning MB and HD? So in order to solve it, not always we need Venn diagram because you can't directly see that. But if you don't see it right away, you can just try to imagine what's the probability that we are looking for by using Venn diagram. So let's say some of the computers after 10 years have problems with motherboard and some of them with hard drive, and they are not disjoint events because they have intersection, and 15% of cases they have the same motherboard and hard drive problem. Now the question is, what's the probability that a 10-year-old computer still has fully functioning motherboard and hard drive? It means that neither of them. So not HD, not MB, and we are talking about this area. How to find this area? This is the probability of the sample space minus the probability of union of MB and HD. So that's how to solve it. Probability of the whole sample space minus the probability of union of MB and HD. So the next thing to do is to just see, do we need a formula for that? Or for example, what is the value for probability of the sample space? So the probability of sample space, you already know, this is 1. This is the maximum value a probability can get. So for 100%, it covers all the area. What about the union? So for union, you remember, you can always use this formula that you can write the marginal probabilities. So for motherboard and hard drive is marginal probabilities minus the intersection of them. And we already have all the values that we need, right? So it will be 1 minus, here we have 40%. Here we have 30%. And for their intersection, we have 15%. Okay, so here inside this square bracket, we have 55%. So what's the final answer? 45% is the final answer for this probability. The probability that after 10 years, the computer is fully functioned. It doesn't have any problem with motherboard and hard drive. Okay, let's go through the second one. In this question, we are trying to practice using a table to see how we can find the probabilities from a frequency table. So the information about the number of computer engineering students who took a specific programming language courses are given based on their genders in the following table. So either they are male or female, and here they are the programming languages. Now assume that one student is randomly selected from this student. What's the probability of the student being a male? Okay, now this is what I mean by marginal probability. It means that you should find the margins. So here, this is a frequency table, but whenever we talk about probability, this is related to relative frequency. So what do I need to do? First, I need to find the summation of the marginals. So 20 plus 30 plus 50, this is 100. So let's find all the summations. So for the second row, we have 10 plus 10 plus 30, it will be 50. And 100 plus 50 will be 150. So we will have 150 students in total. And what about columns? We can do that too. So 30 of them took C++, 40 took MATLAB, and 80 took Python. So when we ask what's the probability, it means that at the end you should give us a value between 0 and 1. And in extreme cases, they can be 0 and 1 themselves as well. So what's the probability of being a male? It means that check the marginal frequency here for number of males. We have 100 number of males. Out of how many students? 150. So easily you can see that the answer is 100 over 150. Always check that the answer is a value between 0 and 1. If you miscalculate it, it means, for example, you find it is 2 more than 1, or it is minus something, then that's not the probability. Most probably you made a mistake in your calculation. So what's the probability of taking C++? Here, the number of students who took C++, doesn't matter male or female, 30 of them. So 30 over 150. That's the final answer for this one. You see? Now, the third one, taking both MATLAB and Python courses. So MATLAB and Python at the same time it happened. How to find this one? Actually, for tables, it's very easy, because when we are talking about intersection, sometimes we should check whether they are independent or not. Then by finding their multiplication, as I explained you in the lecture, then you should find it. But when we have the complete table, it's very easy to find intersection, even easier than marginal probabilities. So it means that taking MATLAB and Python at the same time. When I look at the table, I understand that we don't have such a student at the same time he took MATLAB and Python, because MATLAB and Python, they are disjoint events based on this table. So what should I say? It is impossible. So the probability of empty set, this is 0. So the final answer is 0. We should be careful, because at the end you should give a value between 0 and 1, or 0 and 1 themselves. So next question, taking either MATLAB or Python course. Okay, this is different. So it means that we should find the union, not the intersection this time. So do you remember the formula? It's exactly the same as the previous question. So marginal ones and also the intersection. You subtract it from the intersection. So M and P. So one by one, we should calculate them. What's the probability of taking MATLAB? So the summation of them is 40. So as you can see, the way we did it before, here in the table, we showed that what are the summations. So it's very useful for you guys to do it from the beginning. But if you didn't, directly we can write it here anyways, but it's helpful. So I suggest you guys to do that. So 40 over 150, because I already know that what's the total number of students. And what about taking Python? The summation of these two together. So 80 over 150. And what about their intersection? In the previous question, question number 3, we showed that this is 0. Okay, so here, that would be a problem. No, this is okay, because the maximum, now the value that we got is 120, which is less than 150. There's no problem with that. So if it gets, for example, 80 here, 160 over 150, it means that you did miscalculation. So 120, 100 over 150 is the final answer. The summation of these two over 150. Okay, the next one, not taking MATLAB. It means that we are asking about the complement of a probability. So here we are talking about not taking MATLAB. You can show it either by C, bar, or prime. So how to solve it? As usual, whenever we talk about complement, consider the sample space. So what's the probability of sample space? This is 1 minus that part which is not included. Again, in Venn diagram, this is clear. So if the event of MATLAB is here, the complement, it means that whatever which is not inside this set. So 1 minus 40 over 150. So 1, you can change it to 150 over 150. So the final answer would be 110 over 150. And please, whenever I have miscalculation, let me know so I can fix it in the comments. Okay, so taking Python if he's a male. So taking Python if he's a male. Whenever you want to write a conditional probability, from here I understood this is related to conditional probability. This is different from asking about AND. You see, AND logic, we just translate it into intersection. But when we talk about if such that, given that, we know that that even happened. So in that scenario, we should use conditional probability. But how to use that? Taking Python if he is a male. So I know that he's a male. This is a condition. So you write your condition in as the second component of the probability. So I know that that's a male. So what's the probability of taking Python? So P here stands for taking Python and M for male. Don't confuse it with, for example, MATLAB. M is not related to MATLAB in this bar. So when you want to solve questions, maybe in the same item, you need to rename them. For example, for MATLAB, you write, for example, MAT. For male, you just write the whole word. But anyway, since we are dealing only with item 8.6, so I denote P with Python, M with male. How to solve it? Do you remember? We can use the simple formula for this. If we have the information, great. If not, then we should use Bayes theorem, the Bayes rule, and also law of total probability. So the probability of the intersection over the second component, which is our condition, the marginal probability of being male. So this is one way to deal with that. You already know how to find each one of them. Like the probability of taking Python and being a male is 50 over 150, right? And what's the probability of being male? We already calculated 100 over 150. But there is also another way which is easier for tables. So in that scenario, by directly looking at this one without using the formula, I can say that I know that we are talking about only males, not females. So what was the summation of males? 100 of them. We have 100 of them in the class. So now instead of 150, I write 100 right away here. So I know that among males, I'm going to find the probability. So what's the relative frequency of taking Python comparing to being a male? So in that scenario, I see that this is 50 over 100. So let's see if I have used the formula, do I reach the same? So here you see we have 50 over 150. And for this one, we will have 100 over 150. So these two will be eliminated and we will have 50 over 100. So you see directly, when we have the table, we don't even need a formula for that. And this is a faster way to solve it. But if you want to always use the number of all the possibilities, so we have 150, so the size of your sample space is 150, then you can use formula always and it works. But if you see it right away from the table, you don't need to use the formula for that. For example, for A7, let's do it directly without using the formula. Taking C++ if she is a female. So we know that we are talking about females only. So how many of them do we have? If I find the summation, this is 50. So I should have 50 here. And what about taking C++? 10 of them took C++. So this is 10 over 50. Then directly you can find it using the table. So you can practice all the probabilities that we had in the lecture and try to just compare it with this one. And let's see if you can calculate it. Try with, for example, complements, intersection, union, and also conditional probabilities so that test yourself whether you can find such probabilities. Okay, guys, for the next question, let me explain it in another video. I will solve 3 different exercises related to conditional probabilities so that we know exactly when to use that simple formula, when to use the rule related to Bayes, and also law of total probability.